Hello and welcome to the third part of our composition series. In this video, we are going to be talking about form and what form is. And talking about that in terms of music, that is. So, students will be able to understand what form means in music. Students will understand the difference between different forms in music. Specifically, students will understand what sonata form is and recognize the exposition, development, and recapitulation in a piece of music. And then with that, we'll also be making connections with literature. So form in music, what is it? Basically, form is the structure of the song. So what I mean by that is talking about what does it mean, like what do we hear when we are, the order of the song that it comes in. So the most famous one that you probably know is, whether you know it or not, that is the intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, which at least from the studies I've done with my, having my students do some analysis, it's about 70 to 75% of all pop music follows that form. It's kind of crazy. But in instrumental music, we have like AABA form, which a lot of jazz follows, the AB, blah, 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 the ABBA, Mamma Mia. No, I'm getting carried away. But there's a lot of different form factors in music. But one that we're going to be talking about is sonata form. Not the car. Sonata form in music. Sonata form follows three main parts. There's the exposition, development, and recapitulation. And not copiculations, recapitulation. That should be an A. Pardon my typo. And this is it became a famous form, hence why a lot of sonatas are written in sonata form, like Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata follows the sonata form. But we also find it finds its way in a lot of symphonies, but now we're actually hearing it, whether you know it or not, in electronic music, which is why we are studying it today. So let's dive into those three parts. The exposition is where the themes are introduced, the melodic and the rhythmic themes that you might have that become iconic for your piece. Usually it's simple, and it's on the shorter side, although, it can be a little bit longer in terms of the differences between the different parts that we have. The development is where these themes that were introduced in the exposition are taken and embellished. They're developed, whether it's going through various different key changes, tempo changes, instrumentation changes, just lots and lots and lots of changes. This is where the changes happen because things are developing. And then we have our recapitulation. Recapitulation is a big word, but ironically, we are all very familiar with it because we know the abbreviation as recap. And a recap restates themes that were introduced in the exposition. It's usually the shortest section of a song, and it leads to the end of the song. Now, I wish when I learned about sonata form in college, I was introduced to it in high school music theory, but also in college, nobody explained it to me like this. Sonata form is just this. This is the plot graph that you might be familiar with in, if you taking literature or English. And it is basically what makes a good story a good story. And ironically, it's the same thing in music. It's what makes a good song a good song. Again, good being, depending on the person, one person might not find one song, quote, good, but it will lead to a successful song for some listeners at some point. It's just whether, you can even see that they even use some of the same terminology. Exposition, it's where the characters are introduced, the themes are introduced. Then we have the pivot point, the conflict, but that is just like it leads to our development. And then songs also have a climax where the big moment of the song, or in electronic music, the quote, the drop, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's dropping, because there's not really a falling action. In music, it just kind of goes right into the recapitulation or the resolution. But this would have made my understanding of sonata form so much more solidified. It also would have helped me understand plot graphs in English a little bit too, if I knew that they kind of go hand in hand. So this is our goal. We are going to work on developing an exposition where we develop our themes, and we've kind of come up with our themes in music, or in the past with our introduction of our percussion and our chords and our bass line. But then we're going to be working on the development. And the development is it's kind of up to you. And I'll show you some examples of how we can develop our music using the building blocks we have. And then we're going to have our recapitulation, where we kind of go back to our exposition. If you listen to DJs or producers like Marshmello or Calvin Harris, they follow this pattern almost exclusively. And what you'll find is that they'll do it through twice. So they'll go through once, and then they'll literally, in probably Logic, drag their cursor and copy everything and paste it and just do it twice. And that makes their song. So let's dive into it. Understand that creativity is going to be the key to this. We've talked about building the building blocks, but now it's up to you on what to do with it. You get to choose what plugins you're going to use, whether you're going to use effects, reverb, kind of play around with the EQ settings, what different tones you want. But don't get overwhelmed by that. I want you to keep it simple, because simplicity is key in making things sound really professional. It's really true. Excuse me. And so let's go into Logic and see what we have. I have here my project. I'm going to turn this up a little bit. I can't test. Hello? There we go. Much better. So I have my setup here. I have my drum line from the last video, and I went ahead and added my bass line here. And then I built a chord progression on top of that, like we've done in the past. And it's not too bad. But having it all play at one time is not very exciting. To come into a song just like this. No song just comes in with just, that. So we are going to dive into it. And I'm using my solo feature to kind of figure out how I want to layer this. So I might have... There it is, so I can kind of layer it. Yeah, so definitely want my keys to come in, but I don't want the piano. So we're going to dive into that in just a second. Before we move on, we're going to also organize our thoughts by kind of creating the path of how far we want things to, where my exposition is going to end, where my development is going to be, and where my recapitulation is going to be. So I'm going to click here, this button here, and I've got a whole bunch of exciting things. I can change my key signature. I can change my tempo. We're not going to touch any of that. We're going to create arrangement. Oh, no, you're not going to click arrangement. We are going to click marker, because I can change the title of marker. Yes, and so I'm going to double click on marker 1 and write expo, for short for exposition. And I want that to go, probably keep in mind that we like things that are divisible by 2 and 4. So I'm going to go over to 16, because 16 measures will get me, where am I? Oh, no. I deleted everything. All right. Marker. 16 measures is going to get me 4 blocks. Again, we have our building blocks. You see how it ends at the end of the 16th measure, because that's how music works. And so I'm going to move my playhead to the 17, and I'm going to hit another marker. So this is going to be expo. And the next one is going to be dev for development. And we could do another 4 blocks to keep life simple. And at 33, I'm going to do another marker, and it's going to be called recap. And I'm just going to have this one short. It's going to end at, it's going to only be 4 measures long, so it's going to be ending at, again, 2 blocks, 41. And then I can do expo again, because I might repeat it. So there we go. Oh, exop. Expo. There we go. I've got my markers all set up. And I can close that now, and there it is. Nice organized tabs to show me how far I want things to go along. And now I get to do some arranging. So in the last class, we kind of figured out what sounds we wanted for my drums. And I'm going to quickly go here. I don't want piano per se. I might want some classic clean synthesizers. So I'm going to go into classics. Let's do 80s fizzy synth. Actually, Dream Dancer is kind of awesome. I can go in and change the settings. Yeah, I like it. And we're going to see that we can do some changes to the development later on. I might put the volume, let's see, drive a little bit. Oh, no. All right, let's see what it sounds like. It's too quiet. Oh. God. You know what? I'm going to have Dream Dancer anyways. I don't mind having it quiet at the beginning. And here's why. Because I'm probably going to have just this as I build things up. Not a bad way to start. Great. But now I want my bass to start here. So I'm going to solo it, but I'm also going to make sure you click the track that you want to change the plugin. Many times I have students who are like, Mr. Gallant, something went wrong. It's not changing. And it's like, yeah, you don't have the right track clicked on it. I'm like, oh. So make sure that the track you want to change is selected. I'm going to go back into synthesizers. I'm going to go to bass because this is my bass. Big saw bass. Let's see what it sounds like. I'm going to highlight my 2 tracks here and just, loop them. Just going to the top right corner. Move this. Yes. All right. Now I've got some exciting things going on. It's still my exposition. I'm introducing these themes. I'm not developing them yet. Not to be totally honest, I can change my exposition and development to be right here. But we need to kind of come together and introduce our snare and our bass drum. So I say this is a great place to add our bass drum. We're just going to loop these things. And now, as you can see, I'm layering as I'm going along, where I have simple things and I introduce things every 4 measures per se, because that's how long our blocks are. But it's also, it allows us to kind of have symmetry. Ooh. Get things going along. I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot. And last but not least, we have our snare. But snare by itself is sad. Well, yeah. So there we go. Now, there's my exposition. That was it. I like it. I'm happy with it. And now we're at our development. It's like, well, Mr. Gallant, what do we do now? Well, if we go back to our graph, we want a pivot point. So we're going to create a pivot point by drawing back. We're going to go back to something simple, probably back to the chords. But now we're going to be adding things to it to rise up to our climax. How do we do that? Let's take a look at this. So I'm going to have my Dream Dancer chords, but they're going to start getting quiet. So I'm actually going to create under this a second version of this, and I'm going to copy and paste those chords, and I'm going to have something different. Let's solo this. Find something awesome. Synthetic pipe organ. Maybe. How does that work? All right, it's something, but I don't want it to come in super quickly. This is where automation comes into play. What? Automation, Mr. Gallant? Yes, automation. Remember that thing? Yup. It's this button right here. Click automation, and now I'm going to go volume, and I'm going to introduce my secondary chords over 2 block periods. Because let's be honest, actually, the development, I'm going to add another marker here. I'm going to add a marker here, and it's going to be, hello, da, drop. There we go. So my development is only going to be 2 blocks filled. So we got to kind of do this quickly, but listen to this now. What? You're like, why'd you stop? That was awesome. It was awesome. Thank you. I'm also going to keep my bass drum going on because my bass drum's a steady drum beat, right? So that's going to have that drive going on. Classic. We need that drum, the snare now. So here's how you do the snare. Oh, that's right. It's, ooh. You can totally record it. So we're going to record some simple things. We're going to be, I'm going to start recording the snare here. So I'm going to record it. It's something. Not too exciting, but I can go in and highlight this. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to add it right here. So now I've got this solo. Oh, that sounds gross. Mr. Blunt, what's wrong with you? I'm going to highlight it and go to quantize, and that should clean things up. It's still not exciting. So I'm going to highlight this. Yeah, kind of keep that the same. Building that up. Let's delete these guys. So I'm just kind of manually manipulating my snare. Dun, 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 dun. So that I can have that classic snare build-up trope. And even so, keep in mind, remember back in a rhythm, you keep cutting things in half, they technically can go infinitely. So let's cut these guys short, copy them, zoom in a little bit, and paste them right there. What do we got? We're getting somewhere. Anyways, so this is my development. Let's hear what it sounds like all together. Let's close this. Just realized I'm short in time. This is what I mean by developing. So organizing your exposition, your development, the drop, and the recap, and you do get a pretty awesome build-up, development, leading up to. And clearly you bring it back. Bring back the bass. And the drums. And you get, yeah. That's it. Now it's kind of your turn to be creative. Let me know if you need any help, but have fun.